I get hit on a lot at Republican events from married people. Guys.
Married men.
Now it's time for a roundup of some quick hits and some crazy stories, including, up first, Don Lemon, the ex-CNN journalist, spreading some obnoxious lies about Republicans and how hot he thinks he is, apparently. Take a listen.
I get hit on a lot at Republican events from married people. Guys.
Married men.
Yeah.
The same men that go around asking what a woman is?
Yeah. And saying that liberals are groomers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are blowing up Grindr at the Republican convention. Got it.
The caption of this video was, "Never forget that the Grindr app crashed at the RNC." You know, Don, maybe I'm naive, but I'm old enough to remember when journalists did fact-checking. That whole thing about Grindr crashing at the RNC was fake. It was all started by a rumor posted by a parody account. It wasn't a real thing. Fact checkers have debunked this. No, Grindr executives did not say that the RNC was like their Super Bowl. It's a fake quote. No, there were no outages of Grindr in Milwaukee during the RNC. It's been debunked. But hey, what are pesky facts when there's an opportunity to kind of push a self-congratulatory and arrogant dunk on Republican men? And of course, look, there are some DL Republican men, and there are some married men out there who do hit on gay men sometimes. Like, that is a thing. But Don, if we're being honest, I don't think you get as much of that as you're letting on, okay? Especially because they'd have to be pretty stupid to not think that you would just like talk about it or rat on them publicly when you're so clearly hostile to them. And then the whole thing here is just giving arrogant, and he's teamed up with this social media guy who just craps on the right with these very trite talking points for this video, and it just kind of shows you how far Don has fallen since getting fired by CNN and trying to become a online media star with not that much of a real constituency or following or support for his content, so he's reduced to these kinds of antics to get attention. Not a great look, if you ask me. Up next, this fat positivity TikTok star is complaining that makeup companies aren't size inclusive. Take a listen to this interesting video.
Y'all, even the makeup brands aren't size inclusive. I was invited, keyword invited, by a makeup brand to attend their pop-up here in LA. And soon after my arrival, I very quickly made my departure because not only did they have makeup, but they also had clothing, but none of it came in plus sizes. So after I left, I sent the brand a DM expressing my disappointment that I was invited and they didn't have clothes for me. And to rectify the situation, they let me know that they had size inclusive merch that they would love to send me, and they directed me to their website to go check it out. Now I'm like, okay, size inclusive, bye-bye, because it's very rare for anyone to be size inclusive nowadays. And now because the brand said it themselves, I was like, okay. Now I go to the website, y'all, none of the merch comes in plus sizes. Not every item comes in all the sizes. It is just very not size inclusive, even though they told me it was.
Babe, I'm gonna hold your hand when I say this. The problem is you. You are not a little plus sized. You're not 20, 30 pounds overweight. You are morbidly obese, hundreds and hundreds of pounds overweight. And if you don't rectify that, it will most likely cause you to have an early death, a very premature death, or serious health issues soon. So the problem here is not that brands don't make an 8XL. It's that you are slowly killing yourself, and people, in the name of compassion, are cheering you on rather than being honest with you. And look, the whole point was, it's a makeup brand. The makeup there was that you were invited to see was fine. They just also had clothes, and that didn't fit you. Well, the whole point was that it was a makeup opportunity, a makeup collaboration, and presumably the makeup works for everyone regardless of their weight or size. So it's just giving you want to be a victim. You are incredibly entitled, and they even tried to be nice about it and tried to make it up to you, and it sounds like there was some miscommunication or an error on their end, and that is unfortunate. But ultimately, like, this brand is not the problem. And this is what this creator does. She just goes around putting brands on blast because they don't have 15 XLs, as if they should just carry every imaginable size always, even though only a tiny, 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 tiny percentage of the public would ever need it. Like, at some point, I hope these body positive influencers will realize that past a certain point of reasonable accommodation to the fact that not everyone is going to be a size 0, the problem might be you. Up next, this Michigan Republican state representative is railing against gay marriage and introducing a resolution calling on the Supreme Court to overturn it. Take a listen to his remarks at a press conference unveiling his resolution.
Have some remarks prepared. I'm going to be sharing these and I won't be taking any questions afterwards. Today, February 25th, in the 2025th year of our Lord, I hereby call on the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn Obergefell versus Hodges. This decision has defaced the definition of marriage, undermined our God-given rights, increased persecution of Christians, and confused the American family structure. Michigan Christians follow Christ's definition of marriage as a covenant between a man and a woman, an institution established to glorify God and produce children. To my fellow conservatives, if we cannot conserve the bedrock of our civilization, the family, then we can't call ourselves conservatives anymore. Now is the time to do the right thing. Now is the time to reassert the sovereignty of Christ as our King. Now is the time to restore the authority of God and submit our will to He who knows what's best. May He be gracious to you. May He turn His face towards you and give you peace. Amen.
Wow. There's a lot here to unpack with this man. For one thing, his presentation is not exactly giving confident alpha male. I'm not taking any questions. Why? What are you afraid of? Afraid of a little scrutiny, a little pushback? You're just going to get up there, unveil your little resolution, do your big one, and then you're afraid to have anybody question you? Interesting. And it's just honestly, it's weird to care this much about other people being married. It does not affect you in any way that across the state of Michigan, there are several thousand happy same-sex couples who get married and who can access the tax benefits and the legal benefits and the healthcare benefits and the rights that come along with being married as opposed to just being someone's partner. Doesn't affect you. You can talk about the other stuff like persecuting a baker who won't make a cake for a wedding or pushing inappropriate gender ideology onto kids, but none of that is intrinsically tied to gay marriage. You can stop all of that without repealing gay marriage. And going off about your religion and your personal version of Christianity and how it's, against gay marriage, that's fine, but that's you. That's your religion. And you don't have the right to force it onto everyone in all of society, your version of Christianity and your faith and what your faith says about marriage. Your church doesn't have to do gay weddings. Your church can hold to a biblical version of one man and one woman. But if we don't have a theocratic Christian nation where our laws are just embodied Christianity, a certain sect, because there are lots of Christians who don't agree with this take. Also, I will point out, and it's giving theocrat, it's giving no respect for the First Amendment and the Establishment Clause of the Constitution. Now, the important thing to note here is that this resolution is not going anywhere. It's not going to pass. The Michigan State Legislature is controlled by Democrats, so it's not going to go anywhere. And even if it did, these non-binding resolutions, as I've explained on the show in the past, don't do anything. They're not cases the Supreme Court could take up. They're basically just giant virtue signals, so they have no actual impact. So you'll probably see a bunch of liberals and progressives like sharing this news about this Michigan guy as if it's significant. It's really not. It's just kind of obnoxious. And again, it's weird to be obsessed with gay people like this. Just go about your business and your life, okay? And stop trying to take rights away from people who are just living their best lives. Up next, people on right-wing Twitter are attacking a new MSNBC host because of his appearance. So Eugene Daniels is leaving Politico to host a new MSNBC weekend roundtable show. Eugene is somebody I've loosely followed on Twitter for years. I don't know that much about him. I've heard him say some silly woke stuff over the years, to be sure, but that's not what many people online are going after him for. Instead, they're focusing on his appearance, the fact that he is an effeminate gay black man and apparently wears nail polish. One popular conservative account said, "This is the president of the Nonpartisan White House Correspondents Association," showing a picture of Eugene with his nails painted blue. Always nice to grab a manicure before going on MSNBC to bash Trump. Ian Miles Chong tweeted, He's an actual person and not a hilarious Key and Peele character. You couldn't make this up. So this annoyed me for a couple of reasons. Criticize this guy all you want for the substance of his work as a journalist, for his political analysis, for the dumb things he has said or done. But if you're resorting to attacking or mocking people's appearance, you've already lost. Like, you don't have a strong footing if you're forced to resort to that. It's just never a good point, because just because somebody looks a certain way doesn't mean they're right or wrong about any issue. And I'm sorry, but who cares if a dude wants to wear nail polish? It's literally just paint that goes on your fingers. And if that keeps you up at night, if that gets you so offended and outraged, you should ask yourself why. It's really not that big a deal. And it's okay for people to be gender nonconforming. Like, these rigid sex stereotypes that people on the right can see. When we talk about like non-binary and gender ideology, they're like, this is all rooted in this cartoonish vision of what it means to be a man or a woman. Like, women wear dresses and like makeup, and men like sports. And yeah, and that's silly sexist stereotypes that y'all are now upholding when you attack people just because they're gender non-conforming. Some men always have been and always will be more feminine. It doesn't hurt anyone. It doesn't affect you. And attacking someone over that is stupid. It's a waste of time. Now, maybe you think Eugene Daniels is a terrible journalist. Maybe you think he's a woke fool. Maybe he said the worst things in the world. He shouldn't be at the head of the White House Correspondents Association. He shouldn't be an MSNBC host. All of that is fine. But none of it should have to do with his appearance, okay? And if you find yourself focusing on that instead of making a substantive argument, ask yourself why. All right, guys, we got one final story, a crazy CNN clip I just couldn't help. I have to talk about. As you probably know, the context for this is that under Elon Musk's direction, the Doge department is sent out emails to federal employees asking them, what did you do last week? Send us 5 bullet points. You got till Monday at 5 p.m. Let us know. And they said, if you don't respond, you'll be terminated, although they've walked that part back. Well, people on the left freaked out at this basic request, with several people on CNN even calling it, quote, abusive
of federal workers, and it is just plain wrong.
And it's random. It's abusive. It's random.
It's abusive. Yes, I do think that. I think the way that they are. Yeah, I think the way that they are treating them.
Why? How is this abusive?
Scott, have you ever gotten an email from someone that said, you better do this or else you're going to resign?
Yeah, it's called having a boss in the private sector.
From someone who's not your boss?
The White House is every federal worker's boss. That's number one.
Elon Musk is not anybody's boss.
Scott, how is Elon going to evaluate? I mean, how is he going to evaluate the work of thousands of federal employees when he has no idea what they do?
He's not. The test was, are you even paying attention to your email? Are you even at your terminal?
Some federal workers, he sent it on a weekend. Some federal workers do not have access to their emails on the weekends. They just don't.
Did they go to work today? I mean, look, the amount of outrage, melting down, and sort of outpouring of emotion over this ought to tell you everything you need to know.
So this is so wild to me that people actually think it would somehow be abusive to ask employees like, hey, what'd you do last week? Give me a couple bullet points. Now, there's a fair point to be made that like the Doge department is not going to be able to go through millions of responses and doesn't know enough about every single department to really evaluate, okay, based on these responses, are they true? Did they really do enough? All that. But the request itself is not like some hateful, abusive, or absurd thing. Every boss in America expects to know what their employees are doing, and they should be able to sum up in a couple bullet points what they're doing. And if you can't, there are some serious questions that should be asked. And Elon also just pointed out that part of this was just to gauge responsiveness, because there's a lot of federal employees who are just checked out and who barely answer their emails and never go into the office, and they want to see who's even engaged. So maybe this initiative of sending out this email is not the smartest thing in the world, or not going to be particularly effective, but to call it abusive is laughable and just shows you how incredibly out of touch these people are with the expectations and demands placed on everyday Americans in their little bubble, where something like, oh, your boss is asking you, what have you been up to lately, is abusive. Like, give me a break. It is so absurd and so incredibly out of touch. What did you guys think of these quick hits? Let me know in the comments. And all right, everybody, that's it for this episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Please do make sure to subscribe if you aren't yet, and we'll talk again real soon.